Good morning, everyone. I am Sachin Gupta, the co-founder and CEO at HackerEarth, and I will be welcome to the webinar. I hope your day has been off to a good start. As I said, I'm the founder and CEO at HackerEarth, and I will be your co-host for the webinar today, along with my colleague, Pritika. So the topic for our discussion today is why skill assessments are an accurate measure of technical talent. And in fact, more importantly, why should you even care about it? The webinar is broadly divided into two parts. The first is where I will talk about some of the macro trends and the challenges around technical recruiting. And the second is where Pritika will walk you through the product and give you examples of how we make it easier for you to accurately assess technical skills. But before we begin and dive into the webinar, there are some quick housekeeping items that I would like to share with you. Questions can be asked at any stage, and we will address them as and when possible. So please feel free to ask your questions. There is an option to post your question via GoToWebinar. My colleague and I will be constantly monitoring, and whenever we find it's appropriate, we'll pause and address the questions. If we're not able to cover it in between the session, we will definitely pick some of the top questions and answer them towards the end of the webinar. The session is being recorded. So the slides and the recording will be shared with you post the webinar. So in case you miss out on something, don't fret. We will send across the recording and slides to you. And the last thing is at the end of the session, we will have a 2 questions poll about the session in terms of how the content was, did you find it useful, and so on. So any feedback, I really urge you guys to fill out the poll. It helps us to improve the quality of webinars we do and maybe present something better to you next time. Okay, so let's dive into the webinar. At the start of this decade, Mark Anderson penned this famous essay, which was titled "Software is Eating the World." And in my opinion, I think it's been one of the most profound statements in the industrial world. Fast forward 8 years, and today, most of the businesses have already become software businesses. So it's in some sense, it's almost cliched to say that software businesses are becoming software companies. I think that that transition has already started. Obviously, it's going to take for some companies years, for some even decades to complete the transition. But what this transformation means for for you, for your organizations, for the decision makers, is that as businesses become more technology-led businesses, the ability to both recruit and retain technical talent is going to be the difference between the companies that last and the companies that don't. So the reason Google is Google and why is it so large today, or Facebook is Facebook, or Apple is Apple, or Amazon is Amazon, is precisely because of their ability. These organizations are recruiting machines when it comes to technology, and they built technology teams all across the globe, and they continue to do that at a breakneck speed, and more importantly, efficiency. So the ability to hire the best technical talent is going to be a key differentiator. Now, in order to successfully transform themselves into software organizations, as I said, our companies will have to develop the ability to understand, evaluate, and importantly, inculcate technical skills within their organization. And hence, technical skills are going to be the most valued global currency. We can already see this taking place at scale across spectrums of organizations. Big tech companies, I already spoke about them. They value tech skills over, I think, almost every other traditional signal. Resume, pedigree, your background really doesn't matter. In fact, some of these organizations have gone out and proactively said that they do not consider schools and the background that people come from, and what only matters is their ability to write good quality code. For some of the new age startups like Airbnb or Uber or Oculus, they came into existence in an era when these traditional signals were on a downward trend. For them, it's from day one, it's just been about how can I evaluate and how can I identify the technical skills that I need, and everything else doesn't really matter. So for them, from day one, it's been the same story. And for some of the more traditional brick and mortar businesses, I think the challenge is twofold, and I think that's where the challenge is most complex, is that they not only have to build the ability to recruit talent, to build their teams in-house. So a lot of the large traditional businesses have thrived on outsourcing their technical teams. And now they're slowly bringing it in-house because it's obvious, right? If software is going to be your core value proposition, then you want your IP to reside in-house rather than being outsourced. So there's a transformation that's taking place when you try and bring your outsourced functions in-house. For that, you obviously need to recruit new talent. And then also the second aspect of the problem is they have to continuously upskill, reskill, train, and transform the talent that already exists within the organization. And that's where the aspect of inculcating technical skills into the organizations come into picture. But the fact remains that technical recruiting is hard. It's extremely hard to identify and hire talented developers. And there are various reasons for that. First, there is a plethora of different skills, and the landscape is continuously evolving. So, I think if I look at the last half a decade, in the last 5 years, there has been emergence of some, I think about 8 to 10 major technologies. Tech that is, in fact, 8 to 10 is a conservative figure. Technologies that probably were not in the radar half a decade back, but today they become mainstream. For instance, everybody is hiring a data scientist. Everybody has to care about security. In the front end world, so earlier it used to be, back end used to be the only technology that people would care most about. But today it's the era of full stack developers. You expect developers to have both the capability to build out very slick front end as well as understand the challenges of building out a robust backend. So technologies like React.js, Node.js, JavaScript is reigning supreme. And then I'm just talking about the more popular technologies here. If you start peeling the layers of the onions, there are so many new tech skills that have evolved just in the last half a decade. And that has been the trend for technology for many years. And this will continue to be. So if you're hiring talent, be prepared. If you're hiring technical talent, be prepared for the fact that the technology landscape will continue to evolve at a very rapid pace. So things obviously come in and go out of fashion very rapidly. The second complexity in this is that accurately assessing someone for their technical skills is a fairly complex problem. It's not like evaluating someone for communication skills, and even that is hard. But as a recruiter, or sometimes even as a hiring manager, you get maybe a couple of hours to assess if someone can write good quality code and deploy software in production. Now that's a fairly hard problem to solve, but given the time constraint and the expectation that the quality will be top notch, because the cost of a wrong hire is high in any function, but the cost of a wrong hire in tech can be extremely high, because it takes almost like 6 to 9 months for you to identify if someone is not a performer, and then transitioning them out could be both painful and could take a lot of effort. So being able to assess accurately the skills of a talent, of a person, even before they come into the organization, could actually be super useful if done well. And the third thing, that we kind of very strongly believe in, that further, in some sense, compounds the problem but also solves it, is the fact that today new talent is coming into the talent pool from all kind of sources. Earlier, the major source of good talent were your Ivy League schools, or if somebody had taken certain certifications or done certain courses, that would be a good enough strong signal of their skills. But today, things have changed. With the democratization of computer science education, any kid, sitting in any remote part of the world, they could be sitting somewhere in Africa, as long as they have an internet connection, a laptop that works, they have enough access to learning material online, and the ability to develop programming skills, coding skills on their own. So what that means is that the barriers are breaking down. The traditional signals of competencies are no longer accurate or reliable. Now, I said that compounds the problem, obviously, because it's becoming harder for you to identify who's a good developer if you go beyond the traditional signals. But in some sense, it also solves the problem because now we are operating on a much larger talent pool. The shortage of technical talent is not a surprise to anyone, but I think the world is moving toward a stage where we will soon start seeing a lot of people taking up coding or software development as their primary profession, and the talent pool is bound to increase. And in that scenario, it will become even more challenging for organizations to identify the talent that fits their needs among the vast talent pool that they would have at their disposal. Some of the things that we've seen by talking to our customers, by researching online, are these 4 points around, particularly around technical recruiting. A, the process itself is time consuming. The average duration to close a technical role is anything between 50 to 60 days. So that's just 2 months gone in trying to close a position. The time that a person ends up spending in screening candidates, and when I say screening, we're talking about all the things that one has to do, beginning right from a resume screen to telephone screens to going up to your interviews, subsequent interviews. North of 10,000 plus hours could be spent in screening candidates. The average number of assessment rounds that one has to do, including interviews, is around 6. Could go high in certain organizations. I've even seen 10 or 12. And the average cost of a hire could be as high as $30,000. So what that means is some of the key challenges that companies face is that assessing candidates quickly while not increasing the cost significantly becomes a challenge. Obviously, it's hard to identify top candidates, the best candidates, accurately, right? If you throw time and effort to any problem, eventually you can solve it. But we never have that luxury, right? All our hiring managers come to us and say, hey, I want to hire for this role as of yesterday. So you're already working under a time constraint, and most of the time you're not just working on one role. You're working on a backlog that was not filled. New positions are being opened up. You're always short-staffed. So you neither have the luxury of time nor the luxury of resources, and hence in such a scenario, accurately identifying top talent is hard. It's even becoming harder to understand the expectations of the candidate, because today the demand is kind of higher than the supply. This is a supply-led market, which means the job seeker is the king today, or queen in a lot of cases, and they know what they want. A lot of times they know what they want, and they are becoming very selective about where they want to be. And it's not just about compensation and the traditional things, but people also want to understand what kind of company they're going to work with. They want to understand what kind of culture the company has. And this is a topic for another webinar, but understanding the expectations of a candidate is becoming more and more challenging. And then, of course, with the whole concept of remote hiring, with the advent of talent coming in from a wide variety of sources, it is no longer, I would say, feasible or wise for your entire team to be located in just one single location. If you're a Bay Area company and you want to hire talent just in Bay Area, then good luck to you, because there are 100 other companies funded, 100 more times in certain cases. And then, of course, you've got your tech giant sitting right here in the Bay Area. So there are a very large number of organizations competing for a fairly small talent pool, and it is going to be hard. The wise thing is obviously to go into remote teams sooner rather than later, and that, of course, comes with its own set of challenges. In today's discussion, I think we'll be focusing most of our time on the first 2 points. Maybe the other 2 things, as I said, could be a topic for another discussion. So where does HackerEarth come in? Our value proposition is that we can help you become so good at measuring tech skills that you would never go wrong with hiring a developer. And what that translates into actual value is we help you reduce the time to hire, because now you could close the position with either lesser number of screening rounds, or you could accelerate some of your interviewing process because you have a stronger confidence on the candidates who are coming in the pipeline. We help you deliver a great candidate experience. I'm a software developer by education, and I've done bachelor's in computer science, and I can tell you that writing code on a whiteboard or writing code or explaining code over a call is not the most ideal experience. So the way HackerEarth platform is built, it helps you deliver a screening experience that developers are comfortable with and often enjoy. Obviously, if you're able to screen candidates better, it improves the quality of hires. So now we're talking about presenting a highly qualified pipeline in front of your hiring managers, so that the candidates that come in for eventual interviewing are, they have the skills that your hiring managers are looking for, and hence you help your engineering team take back their time from interviewing. And truth be told, you don't build engineering teams so that they can spend 30% of their time interviewing and hiring candidates. You build engineering teams so that they can write code, right? So by producing a more qualified pipeline, you can ensure that your engineering teams are focusing on what they're supposed to focus on. And of course, because the entire process is automated, it's led through technology. The process of hiring can be scaled across multiple roles, across multiple geographies, and across different kind of roles. So, there are some evergreen roles. You are doing university hiring, you may be doing lateral hiring, you may be hiring across locations, offices. All of this hiring can be mapped onto a single product, and then of course can be scaled. A quick overview, quick introduction to HackerEarth itself. We were founded in 2012. We are headquartered here in the Silicon Valley. We've got our offices across US, India, and then we've got our partners in China and Japan. We proudly serve 1,000+ customers globally. We not only have an enterprise product that's used by organizations for assessing candidates, but we also have a community edition of a product which is used by more than 3 million developers from 450 different locations worldwide. And the developers use HackerEarth for solving problems, to assess themselves for their skills, to prepare them for interviews, and in a lot of cases, just to improve their coding skills. And we're a small, passionate team of 150 people serving the 1,000+ customers and building the 3 million+ developer community. And I'm of a strong opinion that rather than us telling about what we can do, it's best to talk about what our customers have seen. So our customers have seen a significant reduction in the time to hire, in certain cases by 50%, and an improvement in the quality of hires by 60, in certain cases by 60%. For example, for a company called Danami, the conversion rates from assessments to actual hiring increased by 10x. That's a significant improvement on their conversion rates. For Zalora, which is a fashion and retail company, e-tailer in Southeast Asia, 70% of the candidates that passed the assessments were hired. This, I think, had gone up from their earlier pass rates from screening of about 30%. So 3 out of 10 candidates were passing the screening, were passing the interviews after screening, but once they introduced HackerEarth, the passing rate went up to 70%. And Itron, it's a traditional large company in the realm of I think power and electricity, and obviously they're also becoming a software-led business. For them, it became easier to identify and assess talent from a large pool of candidates.
Sachin, I think we have a question for you.
Okay.
Yeah, so one question that was asked is, what do you see the future of tech recruiting to be?
Okay, so that's a good question, and obviously a very broad one. I would like to answer that in I think in a couple of axes, and maybe digressing a little bit, but I do want to address this particular question. So one, I think the first is kind of point that I made earlier in the presentation, that the sources from which talent is coming today is highly diverse in all sense. We're getting people from different racial backgrounds, we're getting them from different social economic strata, we are getting people from different skills, like different educational qualifications. So there are people who've done something else for half a decade or a decade of their professional life, and now taking a boot camp and going into software development. So when you're getting software candidates from such diverse roles, having an accurate way to identify who's good and who's not, or let's say who fits for your organization and who doesn't, I think that's going to be critical. Any tools, any software that can help you do that is going to be important. The second is, and we would love to talk about that in this webinar, but again, it's a topic in itself, is bias in recruiting. And I would say the extreme kind of bias that we see in technical recruiting. We all shy away from talking about the topic, but it's real. There is often a conscious, and if not conscious, an unconscious bias that exists in the recruiting process. And anything that, and I'm not giving solutions here, I'm just saying the areas on which recruiters should focus on. So anything that helps them reduce or even eliminate the bias in their recruiting process would be ideal. The third would be automation, because now you're going to get people from so many different backgrounds, and I'm very confident that over the next half a decade or a decade, the supply and demand gap that exists today is bound to correct itself. So it cannot be perpetually the case that demand continues to be higher than supply. At one point, supply is going to take over, if not in one particular geography, but if you look at the overall global talent pool, we will be able to produce enough number of software engineers that can meet the demand, right? So in that situation, how do you use tool, processes, training within your team, whatever you call it, to be able to scale your hiring across a large talent pool? And the fourth one would be obviously, remote hiring. I did touch upon it in the beginning, or I would say building remote teams. You have to move out of your comfort zone. You cannot be recruiting in just the Bay Area or just in New York or just wherever you are today. You have to branch out and seek talent elsewhere. So I think if recruiters are able to tackle those four problems, I think that would be a good situation to be in. Okay. Yeah. Moving on. And I said we work with 1,000+ customers. We have customers across segments. The big tech companies that you see here, the large enterprises, tech enterprises, non-tech enterprises, small startups. So we work with companies and institutions across the spectrum, and that has allowed us to develop processes within the org, feature sets in the product that kind of cater to the needs of the different organizations. Yeah, so this is, I'm almost at the end of my part of the session. Before I hand over to Pritika.
Sachin, one more question. I'm so sorry. Yeah. One more question. I was asked, is the focus only on developers, or could it be used for niche skills in solution architecting, etc.?
Right. So if I understand the question correctly, you're asking whether it can be used for a senior talent who's probably architecting or who's coming up with how to actually build out the application and not writing code. And the answer is yes. So though a lot of the product is geared towards getting someone to write code and be able to evaluate how good that code is, we also have certain features in the product that can allow you to give, say, for example, a problem statement that says build an architecture for a distributed application that does XYZ. So here you're not asking the person to write code, but you're asking them to come up with an architecture. So this is typically a whiteboarding exercise that you would do face-to-face, but that can be done via the product. So I'm not sure if we will have time to kind of touch upon all of these, all of these minor functionalities within the product. Whoever has asked this question, happy to reach out to you separately and talk about that in more detail. So yeah, moving on. So in what my colleague Pratika would be doing is she'll be walking you through the platform and we'll be talking about some of the core elements. She'll be talking about some of the core elements like how we have built out an AI-based test creation framework that helps you run assessments, which covers 500 different skills and spans across 35 different programming languages. And obviously, once you start using a tool like this, there are bound to be situations where candidates try to game the system, where they try to use unfair means to pass the assessment. So how we build plagiarism and proctoring controls to prevent that from happening. We'll also talk a little bit about our remote video interviewing solution. So in addition to take-home assessments, where you can just send an assessment to the candidate and they can take it at leisure, we also have the feature to do remote interviews, where instead of getting them in for the first round of interviewing or doing the same interview over phone, you can use a real-time code editor to do pair programming and do a very, I would say, a highly relevant technical interview. And then, of course, how the reporting that exists in the product helps you make the right decisions by going through detailed analytics. So yeah, at this point, I'll hand it over to Pritika. Please continue with your questions. We'll take it up as we can. So,
thanks, Sachin. Yeah. So thank you, Sachin. And thank you, everyone, for being part of this webinar. I hope you can see my screen. So, right. So what I'll do is, as Sachin explained, what the platform is like briefly, I'll take you through some of the most important features and how we actually help you measure technical talent more accurately through a couple of use cases. So let me just take you through the first one. So the first one, as stated, Sachin mentioned about the AI-based test creation. So what we try to do that we try to measure your skills precisely by using automated assessments. And what I mean by that is HackerEarth as a platform allows you to create skill-based tests wherein you can assess a candidate on multiple skills. You can add up to a maximum of 5 skills and test their expertise on programming languages. We cover support for more than 35 plus programming languages and help you test over 500 plus developer skills. And of course, we also provide a very extensive question library for you. So it comes pre-built with more than 10,000 questions across all these programming languages and all these developer skills. And you can use these questions and pre-populate it in your test. So what I'll be doing is, as I take you through each use case, I'll give you a quick look at each of these features and how they work on the platform, and we'll go to the second use case. So right now, I'll just switch over and show you what the platform looks like. So this is the admin view of what I get once I sign in to HackerEarth. So like I mentioned, you have a very clean interface here, and what you can do is it's very simple to create a test. So you just have to click on create new test and you just keep adding skills. So what we try to do is, because one of the main reasons we came up with a feature like this is because obviously recruiters and hiring managers often find it very difficult to determine if a person's skills accurately match what they say in their resume or based on a phone conversation that they have. And sometimes, a resume could be a very subjective indicator of someone's skills. But these kind of objective automated assessments, especially when you have skill-based assessments, when you create them and you put your candidates to the test, you can accurately determine and precisely understand the strengths in each of these skills. And we help you do this better by even customizing your test based on the experience that's required for the role. And once you do that, you can change, let's say, the name of the test. So it says it's the test. And you can customize the number of questions or the difficulty type right from the interface. So you can do all of this before you actually create a test. So let's say I can just change the difficulty number or whatever, and then save the question test, and I create my test. Now, when we also spoke about automated test assessments, one of the things that you have to see is that I mentioned about the question library. So once you click on, these are the basic details, I'm sorry about that. So you can actually enter your description and all the instructions that you need to put in here. But one that I wanted to talk to you about was this particular feature, the question library feature, wherein you have questions of different types. We have around more than 11 different question types, and you can just choose to add questions based on whatever the platform has suggested for you. So it automatically populates and creates a set of questions that you can use to assess candidates based on, let's say, the parameters that you just fed. So you fed the skill type, you feed the difficulty level, the experience that's required, and then you get a pre-populated test right in front of you. So let me just go back to the second use case. The second thing that we try doing is of course, for any recruiter, the end goal is to hire the right kind of talent, the right kind of developer talent. Now, no one wants to make a wrong hire, because we already saw that the average cost of a hire can be as high as $30,000, right? So what we try to do at HackerEarth is to help recruiters and hiring managers make those decisions in a more concrete way. So you need to have these decisions backed by data. So we provide a detailed report of a candidate's performance once a candidate has taken an assessment. And we try to detail it and provide as many metrics as possible in a single report, which is enough for the team to make a solid decision. So for instance, if you can take a look, you can look at perhaps the rank of the candidate, the total score, and you also get system-based recommendations on whether to shortlist or to archive a candidate. So I'll be showing you more of this as I take you through the platform. And another thing that we also provide to give you more in-depth details of how a candidate performs is by helping you measure the code quality. So we help each code submission that is made by the candidate is analyzed on several parameters. So you can see a brief of that here. It's measured on the maintainability, the security of the code, reliability, and even the cyclomatic complexity. Now, we do all of this and we assign a score to you to tell you how good a particular candidate is at the programming skills. So in addition to that, we also help you track a candidate's logical skills. So we have a very nifty feature called Code Player, which basically replaces the logic that is used by a programmer while coding, and you can retrace their steps. Now, how this helps is you can use these particular points as talking points when you conduct interviews, right? So now I'll just take you through the platform to show you a brief of all of these features. So I have already a test that's created for me. Let's say this is the candidate report that I want to show you. I want to show you the detailed report. So like I said here, this is when a candidate finishes a report, you have these parameters, these filters that are set up for you. So right now there's review pending for all of these candidates who've taken the test. So you can see that here I get to see details of the rank, the total score, the attempted questions, and I get a recommendation that this particular candidate has cleared the cutoff score. So this person is clear to be shortlisted. In addition, I get to see the test time analysis, how much of the test duration has been used. But this is where I want to bring your attention to. So one of the main things, like I spoke before, was to identify the gaps between the actual performance of the candidate versus what is expected. So here, that's what we try doing. So for example, in all these skills that we've put out here, we try to measure and map the gap, basically measure the gap that exists between these two, and we measure the compatibility of a candidate's skills with respect to the average score that has been set for each particular skill type. And based on that, we take a decision which particular job role would be suited to this particular candidate. One thing that you can see here is these particular cards that we have put here will help you identify the percentage of test duration that is being not used, the code quality, and you also get to see the strengths and weakness of the candidate with respect to the skills that they're tested on. This particular card is basically a proctoring feature, and I'll be explaining more about that in the later slides. So we can, like Sachin mentioned earlier, you can, as a recruiter or a hiring manager, you can actually set the proctoring feature that you need. So here, this is something called a tab switching feature, where we sort of bar the candidate from switching to a different tab while taking the test. And according to this tab has been switched 3 times. So this is where you get to see the profile of the candidate, and also you get to see a detailed submission report, wherein you can see the performance of the candidate with respect to each question that was asked in the test. Now here is where I want to bring your attention to the code quality feature that I had mentioned earlier. So like I said, you get to see the input codes that were fed and the output, the output and the expected output. You get to see, as you scroll down, you get to see the compilation log. You also get to see the code quality based on each of these parameters. And if you go down, you can see the violations in the code as well. Now, this is the code player feature that I was talking to you about. So, you can replay and retrace the steps of a candidate, basically get a preview into the workings of a candidate's brain. So you kind of use that particular, insight into, developing questions for your interview process as well. Right, now I'll just go back. Right, now, I think this itself is a webinar topic by itself about getting a developer's trust. And as Sachin mentioned earlier, this is something that probably we can cover in some of our future webinars. But here I'd like to talk to you about how you can, provide a hassle-free or a very smooth test experience for a developer. Now, according to some of the things that I've read, and in fact, even based on personal conversations with recruiters, almost around 80 to 90% of them zero in on an assessment software only if the developers like it. And it should be so because they are the ones who actually take the test. So what we try to do at HackerEarth is we try to provide a very stable platform that is available for a candidate to take a test. There are proactive alerts that come up every time there is some kind of an internet issue or if there's a compiler issue. You have these alerts coming up so that they know how to tackle it while the test is happening. Because let's face it, no candidate actually wants to take a test and then suddenly see that everything has crashed or if something is hanging. So that's a very unpleasant experience to have. And we try to guarantee this as much as possible by providing an uptime of almost 99.95% and by keeping the platform as stable as possible. The second part that I would like to talk to you about is the code editor. So the code editor feature that we have on the platform, what we try to do is we encourage the candidates to focus on their logic more than the syntax and the semantics of it. So as recruiters or hiring managers, when you set the test, you can provide, you can actually allow the candidates to take a particular test in more than 35 different languages. That's what you see in this drop down here. And we provide something called code snippets that are available on the platform with all the necessary syntax available. So they can just start keying in and start typing the code. In addition to that, there's something called the autocomplete feature that we provide. So as they start typing, the semantics of the code appear, and this helps them, save time on coding and be more efficient and focus on their logical skills a lot more. So let me just give you a preview of a particular test. So this particular test, if I show you, this has, like I mentioned, this is the code editor, and this appears for each programming question that you put here. And here is where, because the person setting the test hasn't given any restriction with respect to the programming language they can choose to code, you have most of the programming languages listed here. And as you choose the programming language, the code snippets also change differently. So here, if I type, this is the autocomplete feature that comes into play here. So this is, I just wanted to show you this particular feature. And here you can change the theme. And also another thing that I forgot to mention is we also allow candidates to code using multiple code editors. So you can choose from these editor modes that are available. So this way, using a very smooth interface, candidates can create, debug, and compile their code a lot more efficiently. In addition to this, another feature that I'll be also showing is, so the tests on the HackerEarth platform can be taken in different regional languages apart from English, 5 different regional languages apart from English as well. So these are some of the ways in which we cater to providing a good developer experience for our candidates. So one of the most important things that we need to keep ensuring our customers is we tell them that we, as a platform, when they choose us, and we've also mentioned numbers about how the quality of hires is improved. We constantly keep improving certain features in our platform so that the quality of hires are always up and above, right? So when we spoke to our customers, as Sachin mentioned earlier, on an average, they conduct around 6 to 7 different rounds of interviews before they decide to hire on a candidate. And that's mainly because they're unable to make those kind of informed decisions. Now, what we are trying to do is we're trying to develop features wherein we provide those insights during each stage of the assessment process. So the reason is, the more rigorous those kind of the more questions you ask and the more rigorously we provide those kind of answers, the easier it becomes for them to make those decisions. So, for example, we have certain features, certain analytic features. This is called the question analytics feature. So wherein even when you're setting the questions, you can decide if the quality of the question is good, if it is going to accurately measure the skill that you're testing for, and you can even check the popularity of the question and so on and so forth. So this is just even before creating the test, we provide that insight to you. The second is something which is called the test analytics feature. Now, this is probably a lot more useful to recruiters who are constantly measuring the effectiveness of the tech hiring process. So this is a snapshot of the candidate hiring funnel, wherein you get to see the drop-off rate of candidates with each stage. So from the pool of candidates who were invited, how many of them attempted, how many of them cleared the test, and how many of them are finally shortlisted. So it's a complete picture of how well your test has worked. And not only that, as I'll take you through the platform now, you'll also get to compare how your assessment performed with respect to the other assessments on the platform as well. So you can benchmark your assessments according to how they performed, and you can measure their effectiveness a lot more objectively. Now, Sachin also mentioned about the advanced proctoring methods, and I mentioned something about tab switching a couple of slides ago. So here, once you're setting up the test, we have a test settings feature where you can customize the test any way you want. So in one of the options, we provide these advanced proctoring options, wherein, for example, as some of the checkboxes listed below are quite self-explanatory, you can disable the copy and paste in the code editor to curb plagiarism. You can constantly take candidates snapshots during the test. So your webcam, you can enable them to, you have to enable them, ask them to enable access to their webcam and constantly take snapshots. This is an intelligent form of proctoring, because the platform will be able to detect if the candidate has been present during the test, if there were other people present during the test, and if there's someone impersonating you as a candidate as well. As you would have seen earlier in one of the tests, when I took a preview of the test, it told me to provide full screen mode. So this is again to allow the candidates to take the test in a controlled environment wherein they don't have any restrictions and they're unable to switch back to any browser or even have the chance to look at some answers, or basically it's a way to curb them from using unfair means. Another thing is log out and leaving the test environment. This is the tab switching thing that I spoke to you about. So like you have different browser tabs, you can enable this particular feature to prevent them from switching to a different browser tab so that they focus on the test. The last particular proctoring feature is basically meant, for example, when you have a university or campus hiring feature wherein you have to restrict the pool of candidates to take the test from a particular location. You can restrict test access based on the IP addresses that you feed.
Hey, Pritika. There is a question that has come in. Can you create your own questions or only choose from the ones that are available?
So you can create your own questions. So there is a feature wherein you can actually add your own custom questions as well, in addition to creating the questions from the question library.
Okay. And there's another question, which is how do you make it so a friend can take the test instead of the candidate?
I didn't get that, Sachin. Could you repeat the question?
So the question is, how do you make it such that a friend can take the test instead of the candidate?
So you can just, I can show you that. So for example, if I publish this test will be available on the platform, and you can just send this in. You can use this invite candidates feature to just key in the email ID of the person that you want to send a question to, and invite the particular person to take the test. So when I do talk about the invite candidates feature, so another thing that I want to mention is, for example, if recruiters are actually evaluating our platform, they use this particular feature to invite a hiring manager to take the test. Or another to take a test, so that they get full access to the platform and they are able to see all the features of the platform. I hope that answers your question.
So I think the question was also in the sense, if I invite someone to take up the test and then they forward it to their friend, or if the friend is sitting right next to the candidate. So maybe I can I can answer that, Brad. When it comes to the proctoring features, in this case, firstly, there are a bunch of things that you would do. First is we restrict login from multiple email addresses. So the person you invite will have to take the test. Now, of course, I can share my credentials and ask someone else to log in, but then it only means one person can be logged in at a time. Now, and if the webcam settings are turned on, whoever is taking the test will turn on their video. We'll have to turn on the video, and the system takes snapshots. Now, within the snapshots, what we do is, so if someone else is taking a test on someone else's behalf, then the system obviously would not know that if Sachin was supposed to take the test, but Sam came and took the test instead, then who's Sam or who's Sachin? Although we are working on that feature, but what you will have those snapshots. And when the person comes in for your interview, it will be very clear that Sam took the test, but Sachin has come for interview. So a person would not do that. The third scenario is where I am doing the test myself, but I've got Sam sitting right next to me. Now, what we do when we take those snapshots is that we run image processing on the snapshots that we collect. The system will check if the person is looking, if there are multiple people within the video port. So if there are two faces in the test screen, then the system flags it, and you would get to know once you go through the reports. If I am away from the test window for a long time, then there wouldn't be any snapshot, and that also gets flagged. If I am looking here and there a lot, or there's too much movement, then in that case also the system flags that there is some suspicious activity going on. So I think if we consider all of these scenarios, there is a very, very remote chance that a person is really able to fake and still show the screen to their friend to tell them the questions and get them to share the answers with them without the system flagging that there are two people sitting in front of the computer. Maybe, yes, it's possible, but it reduces the chances of such occurring to very, very small digits. So what we've seen is, just by enabling such a feature, it's a big psychological deterrent, and then all of these proctoring measures on top of it kind of makes it feel safe.
Okay, thank you, Sachin, because I probably didn't see the entire question, but thank you for that detailed answer. Yeah. Right. So I was at the point where I wanted to show you about how you can make informed decisions at each point. So let me just take you through those particular features quickly. So in this particular test that you see, next to each question, you can check the health index of the question. Anything above 7 out of 10 is a good question to be used in your particular test. So that is some of the questions. One thing that I would like to show you, so like you can see for each particular type of question, you have an index that's there. I wanted to show you a question with respect to the programming questions that are asked. So if I click on this, you get a very detailed report. You will also get the same for the other questions as well. Just wanted to take you through this. So in this particular question analytics report that you see, you can see the attempt rate of the question. So total number of candidates who successfully attempted and solved the question. And this is something that will be of interest to recruiters and hiring managers alike. So like I mentioned, most of the times you can enable the kind of languages that are used on the code editor for a candidate to take a test in. But if let's say this particular question is really good for testing someone's skills in, let's say, Java, Java 8, or C++. It may not be so good when you're testing someone's proficiency in C, Python, JavaScript, etc. So this is basically a map of how candidates have, what kind of languages candidates have used to solve this particular question, and that insight should be able to tell you that this is a good enough question for the programming language that was most popularly used. And if you go down, you also get to see the distribution of scores obtained by the candidates who have attempted the question. So you have a few candidates who have scored between 50 to 59%. Most candidates, number of candidates have scored 100%. And also, this is interesting because you also get to see the usage of the question over a particular period. So there has been a huge peak in August. So this particular question has been used, and a lot of candidates have attempted this question a lot in August, but there is a slight dip. There's a big dip in September. So these kind of insights would be probably very useful for a hiring manager who's setting these particular questions. And you can just share this report with the team and then discuss on the kind of questions that you want to use for a test. In addition to that, I also wanted to talk to you about the test analytics feature. So this is a test analytics feature. This particular report that you have would be very useful for recruiters as well. As I mentioned, it's very useful for them because it helps them benchmark the assessment process. So I already mentioned about the candidate hiring here. What I wanted to talk to you about was the test performance metrics with respect to the total number of for example, 47% of the total invited candidates have attempted the test, but there is this particular number indicates a 23% drop with respect to all the tests in HackerEarth assessment. And if I want to check the quality of candidates, so it tells me that 21% of the total attempted candidates have cleared the cutoff score, but I see there's a 10% drop with respect to all the tests in HackerEarth assessment. So these are decisions that I need to make with my hiring manager. Do I change the cutoff score? How do I improve the quality of questions? Do I change the test duration? All of these questions come into play by looking at this particular report. Again, here, if you can look at the distribution of candidates based on score, you can also check the number of candidates who have scored more than the cutoff score and the median score as well. So another thing is HackerEarth by itself that helps you, it recommends a cutoff score for each particular assessment that you put on the platform. And you can also add your own cutoff score if necessary. I'll show you this in the test settings feature very shortly. And again here, something interesting is sometimes the system generated time is a little different, right? So you can actually see the distribution of the test completion time of all the candidates. Have they taken up the entire duration? In this case, yes. 48% of the candidates have used them. And then you see a number like 22%. You see that number of candidates whose test completion times range from 0 to 9% is like 22. So here, based on this distribution, you'll be able to decide if the test is of the right duration, were candidates more comfortable, taking enough time, or was the time not enough? So you get those kinds of insights. So this is a test settings feature. So when you're setting a test, you can go through all of these detailed features that are available in this particular option that's given by the platform. So you can test the timing, ending, the question settings. You can randomly turn shuffling on. So I just wanted to bring your attention to two particular things. So here is where I had mentioned that the platform itself supports different regional languages other than English. So this is what I mentioned earlier, that candidates can take a test in languages other than English. And here is where you collect the candidate information. So you can choose the kind of information that you would want to get from them. And these are the proctoring settings. So here is where you can, if you add these particular proctoring settings, for example, the next time I take a preview of the test, it will tell me that I need to take the test in full screen mode. Likewise, if I choose candidate snapshot, as Sachin mentioned earlier, you will have to have your webcam on, and based on the image processing technology, the platform keeps taking repeated snapshots of you. And in any case, if you're not present during the test, you as in the candidate is not present during the test, it can be flagged and to be indicated that this particular candidate wasn't available during this particular time, and you have all those details snapshots. Or if there is somebody else sitting in, taking the test for you, the platform flags that as well. So, all of this can be detected by the platform, right? I think that's the last use case, but I think this is a very important one. So often we all know that tech recruiting, as we've seen earlier, is no easy task, and it always helps when you have more heads put together, helping you make collaborative and a more fruitful decision. So this is what we try to do in HackerEarth as well. So one of the things that we do have, as Sachin mentioned earlier, is the live video interview feature, wherein we allow candidates to write their code in real time, and we assess their talent on real time using real time videos. And this is a very interactive way of communicating with the candidate, asking them questions, watching their code, and later discussing with the panel, and so on and so forth. So all of this can be done on HackerEarth as well. The second thing is, as I mentioned earlier, in some of the reports, I think in the question analytics report, I mentioned that you could share it. Likewise, any such report that is generated on the platform, you have the option to share it with the respective key stakeholders and make way for more collaborative decisions. I'll do one last demo of the face code of the video interview feature here, and I'll take you through that, and we'll be done with it. So I wanted to take you through this feature that we call face code, which is our video interview feature. And this is a video interview that up for the purpose of showing you how this feature works. Sorry, I'm seeming to have some technical difficulties in opening this right now, but I apologize for that. I seem to be having some technical difficulties, but what I can do is I can send you a video of how this particular feature works post a webinar. When we send you the slides and the recording, I'll give more detailed resources on how the live video interview features work. And if there are any questions, please do get back to me. So I am done with my portion. If there are any more questions, we can take them now. So that's it from me.
Thanks a lot for that, Pritika. I think the reason why you're not able to open face code is because your webcam is already being used for the webinar. So in case there's a webcam being used, there's a conflict. So that's okay. Maybe you could turn off your video on GoToWebinar and then try accessing.
Let me just try that again. So let me just do that. That's a good idea. Just a second. Yes, my bad. Thanks for the tip, Sachin. So as you can see, my colleague is already here, impersonating as a candidate here. So this is a candidate view, and this is a recruiter view here. And here is the code editor interface. So they can actually type in their code here. And what I can do is, as I'm testing the candidate on air, I can just type the question and with the problem statement and just add it here. And that appears here. So the candidate sees the question, starts typing the code in real time. And it's the same thing. So you can choose between these different types of programming languages, compile and execute them. This is the discussion feature. So if, let's say, have another panelist, in this case Sachin here, I can switch between these two tabs and communicate and talk to them. So here I can talk to the interviewers. Here I can communicate to the candidate in case there are any questions, or if they have any issues during the interview, I can ask them that. And post the interview, you can provide detailed feedback and just submit it, and this will be saved in your activity dashboard. So next time you come onto face code, you will be able to see how the candidate has performed. So here I get to see the average rating, the time, and view the feedback as well. So this is a brief on how face code works. So I hope that was useful.
So yeah, thanks a lot for the insightful demo, Pritika. I think it's you covered all the aspects. I hope the audience today liked what they saw. Just to cover that again, the entire session has been recorded, and the slides will also, along with the recording, will be shared with the participants. We are now running our poll. I would urge everyone who's on the webinar to please respond to the poll so that we can take further actions. So as you guys fill out the poll, just wanted to sign off and say thanks a lot for being the patient audience. Good. We tried doing the webinar, and then look forward to doing another webinar for you. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.